Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that He is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.
The St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, in partnership with Patchwork Heart Ministry and Fiat Ministry Network, present a podcast for divorced and separated Catholics.
Hi, and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. This is Ann DeSantis. I'm the director, joined by Mickey Kelly, the president. And this is part 2 of our series for 10 steps for healing for divorced Catholics, those who are affected by divorce and separation, both the couples and the children, the adult children. And so this is a 10-part series where I'm going to list for all of you those steps, just so that you know where we're going and what direction that we're going to be going in with this podcast. Now, we meet on this one once a month. So this one will be airing, and I wish everybody a Happy New Year, in the first Tuesday of January. And so this will be part 2, because we did part 1 back in December. So here's our list. Number 1 would be acceptance of your situation with God's help. 2 is finding proper help and resources where needed. 3 is stepping back from too many commitments to be with family. 4 is seeking God's help through prayer and sacrifice. 5 is developing your faith in greater ways. 6 is prayer. 7 is sharing your story with trusted friends to find guidance and fellowship. 8 is, if you're not an old, find out more. 9 is develop healthy new friendships with those who have faith. And 10, get involved in ministry in order to help others. So now don't worry about memorizing any of all of those, because this one is only going to be on number 2, which is finding proper help and resources where needed. Let me welcome my co-host, Mickey. Thank you so much for joining us, Mickey.
Great to be here, Ann.
Thank you. And last month when we did this podcast, we had quite a few listeners. So I want to thank those who listened to our part 1. The first podcast, if you haven't listened to it, is on acceptance of your situation with God's help. And this podcast is around 50 minutes or so, maybe give or take a little more, a little less. So let's just delve right into finding the proper help and resources where needed. I first want to just mention that our foundation is about helping families in crisis. And our initial mission since our existence when we began back in 2015 has always been for families wounded by divorce and separation. But we've really expanded that in this last year, that our primary mission really is for families in crisis and adversity. So that could be anywhere from divorce, separation, job loss, loss of a spouse, death of a loved one, relationship issues, other, family problems. So, but what we really like to focus on, what we started out with our mission, because we were founded by the Mercedarian Friars, and we're so grateful to them. You can learn about them on their website at orderofmercy.org, just to mention that to all of you who don't know how we were founded. But let's unpack this finding proper help and resources where needed. Mickey, I know that you yourself, are a child of divorce, and not sure for you or for your family if you could share with us any resources that you found helpful, or do you think that maybe back when your parents divorced, were there not as many resources as we have today?
It's funny, and I think one of the things that, looking back at it, I don't think there were very much resources that were offered to people like myself, being a child divorced parents, and likewise too for those that have gone through a divorce. There hasn't been, the things that we have today. Although I think annulments were were still a thing then, but I didn't think my parents didn't pursue it well enough until about a few years ago when my mom and my stepdad decided to have their marriage blessed in the Catholic Church, even though they were married back in 2003. But of course, they did it through a different avenue. And of course, my dad, of course, he had to be part of the annulment thing, but he just want to be done with it and all that. So there's that. And honestly, I just think that too many Catholics, don't really understand that there are resources that could help them. And of course, like the ones that are, Catholic teaching friendly, of course, because let's face it, like Dr. Phil's not going to help you. Dr. Ross is not going to help you. These celebrity experts, they're not going to help you at all with ways to, get annulments or, cope with divorce and everything and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know that we talked about some of what you just said on our last podcast. We really unpacked the whole idea that, it's kind of two separate things when you have a civil marriage, right? Which is, through our, our county or wherever you live. But then we have the Catholic marriage, which is a sacrament, right? And they're really two separate things. And so we have to really think about the fact that what we do here with the foundation is that we try to offer healing and resources for everything having to do with Catholic marriage, the sacrament of holy matrimony. So we don't really get into as much of the whole civil part of it, right? The civil marriage, but more the fact that we are a Catholic nonprofit, a 501c3, founded by a Catholic religious order. And so thank you also for sharing, Mickey, the fact that, maybe for your parents or even for others who are listening, if they're an adult child of divorce or a couple or a single person now who's been divorced and annulled, there wasn't always that many resources for people, not only to find healing, but even information about annulments and other issues having to do with the end of a marriage. First and foremost, I want to mention our own website. I think it's a great place for people who are listening to go to get some resources. So if you go to our website right now, people who are listening, maybe you have your phone there or laptop, you can go to nonnatus.org. And I just would invite you to click on the tab there where it says helpful resources. And underneath helpful resources, we have a whole page dedicated to for the divorce. I would like to thank someone who used to be a member of our team, who isn't with us anymore, but we're so grateful to her, is Rose Sweet. Now, Rose Sweet has done so much for Catholics who are wounded by divorce. And I just invite all of you also to go to her website, which is rosesweet.com, because she's got a wealth of information. Now, she's a coach, a Catholic coach and an author, not just related to divorce healing, but for anyone who has relationship issues, problems, questions, and wants to grow. You can check that out. But she's also done so much for those who have questions about divorce, and Catholics especially. So if you go to our website for the divorce, we have some videos and podcasts there. In fact, this very podcast is also going to be on that page. And the first one that we did for this series is on there. There's also a video from Rose Sweet and some other videos that I've done with other people there. Now, in addition, on that page, we have YouTube videos, virtual workshops, helping your kids, divorce ER, talking to a priest, common questions, Catholic coaching, and some other things. Rose, as I said, is also an author. Her books are also on our own website, which you can just click on the links there for her books. So just check it out. Check out that page because it's a good one. We also have a helpful resources page called Outside Resources. And if you go to our website and you click on that, we have links for all different nonprofits and organizations having to do with issues and problems that affect families in crisis. So not just those who have been wounded by divorce, but all kinds of websites there. So there's some information there too for divorced and separated, and some wonderful family websites too, because what affects marriage affects family as well. Mickey, I didn't know if you could speak about, both of us know people, we've talked to people who have been affected by divorce, and not just our own families. I should mention that some of you already know who are listening to this podcast is that I myself am also a child of divorce. I am older, I'm in my mid 50s, but my parents had divorced way back in the early 1970s when I was only 7 years old. And I will say that the resources that we offer and that other nonprofits and organizations offer were not available. Of course, there was no internet back then. So everything had to be word of mouth or just through your church or your diocese or archdiocese. So it's just a beautiful thing now that there are so many people and ministries that are offering programs to help others. Mickey, I didn't know if you could speak about, your personal experience, not only with, your family, but we both know people who are Catholics who have had, have gone through separations, divorce, and even annulments. Do you know of any other resources or things that you could offer that you think might help people listening?
Well, I think one of the most important things is that if you know anyone that has experienced divorce, one of the most important things is that, well, I want to say this to the children divorce, is that, and I have been guilty of this many of times, I actually put the blame game on myself, because I remember there are times that my parents would argue, and of course there'd be over like silly things, because my mom, I guess I could probably say like my mom is somewhat of like a perfectionist because she grew up in a full Italian household, and she wanted to do it this way because she's always like doing all the cooking and this and that, and if things don't go out right, it's like those drill sergeants that wants to get on your case, those drill sergeants like at boot camp or anything if you join the military. And I hope that doesn't offend her. She's listening to this right now, but one of the things that's one of the things, because like that would be one of the things my parents would argue, and others would be things like financial things. And let's face it, one of the culprits in divorces is finances. And I think you and I talked about this before. And because if you look at some of the couples, and the other culprit is cohabitation, because they both move in with each other prior to their marriage. And that to me, like it's 80% actually. 80% of Catholic couples, live together before the wedding. And that's very alarming. And of course, that brings about a heck of a lot of financial debt. Instead of the parents, they have to draw the line saying, oh, no, the both of you are not moving in together until your wedding. And of course, I mean, I'm sure as a parent, and, you had to draw a line yourself, with your kids, be like, hey, no moving in together until after the wedding. And so anyway, one of the things, so anyway, back to the point. Number one point is the divorce, the parents' divorce is not your fault. Surely, after looking back at it, I kept blaming myself for it. But in the end, it was the parent, it all fell on the parents. And that's something very important. Now, for those that may know someone that's gone through a divorce, I think one of the important things is if they had, young children, especially if they have young children, especially if you're like a godparent, a close relative, be there for them. And no matter what, they're still your parents, even if the mom remarries or the dad or whatever the case is, they're still your parents. They're going to be there for all the monumental achievements all the momentous occasions and the milestones you will achieve. And they're going to be there for you as long as they are in your life. And the most important thing you could also do is just pray for the healing that they need.
Yeah, good point, because when a family breaks up, a couple breaks up, and especially if they do have children, I mean, the healing is going to be needed. And, we're a Catholic nonprofit, but I'm talking about anybody, any couple that gets divorced, whether they're Catholic or not, healing is needed. And for some, you talk to, and I've talked to some people who've been divorced, and it's not always as unpleasant for some people as it is for others, meaning for some, the breakup is just a huge crisis. And then you hear stories, and I've heard stories where, for whatever reason or however they handle it, it's still somewhat of a challenge and an adversity, but not to the extent that some people go through. So I want to make a shout out to people listening right now and say, that's why we exist. We're here for you. We're here to help to bring you healing, resources, information, care, love, and most of all, prayers, because that's who we are and what we're about, right? But Mickey, thank you for bringing up those two areas that you talked about in terms of why do people divorce or separate? And you brought up two, and I want to talk about a couple resources as well. One of the ones that you mentioned was finances, and on our website, on our outside resources, in fact, if you, like I said, if you got your phone or your laptop, you could go to nonnatus.org under outside resources toward the bottom there. There is a link for one called Catholic. It's called Compass Catholic Ministries. And you can also just go directly to their website too at compasscatholic.org. And I'll read you who they are. They are dedicated to helping you discover smarter ways to manage your money, whether you're in debt or free of debt. We have the resources to help you reach your financial goals and live with a sense of joy and commitment. So they actually approached us a while ago, and we have a little collaborative effort there where we are helping to promote what they do, because they do have wonderful resources for people who have, problems, questions, and need help. And it is a Catholic ministry too. So again, check it out at compasscatholic.org. Now, they don't address specifically, I don't believe, I could be wrong, specifically this ministry isn't for people affected by divorce, but it is a great place for those who have financial problems or issues. The other thing that you mentioned was the cohabitation, is that I would just say same thing, go to our website, nonnatus.org, and go to those outside resources, because we have a lot of family ministry information there on the outside resources in terms of catechesis, right? Isn't it so important to be well catechized in our faith and understanding what we believe as Catholics, that marriage is a sacrament. Marriage is meant to be for a lifetime. It really is. It's called the sacrament of holy matrimony. And it's one of those 7 sacraments that we take very seriously, that your commitment to another person for marriage and family life. And so do learn about some of those other links that we have there. We have a whole section on marriage and family resources to find help. I think that's a great one. Please do check that out. And we also have a section there for, and I will address people who might be listening who are younger couples or getting married. If, we get all kinds of people to listen to this podcast, not always just divorced and separated. But the information there about natural family planning, that's also very important, because as you mentioned, people who don't have that knowledge of human sexuality, or something called theology of the body, which I know many of you listening know what that is, the teaching of John Paul II, which was also written about by Dr. Christopher West. Natural family planning is something that all younger couples and just all couples in general should learn about, because it's a teaching really on what the purpose of the marital act. So this podcast isn't specifically about that, obviously, but I wanted to mention that resource there so that you can check out all that we have to offer. But Mickey made a good point too in talking about waiting until marriage, the sexual intimacy. It's a gift to yourself, and it's a gift to the person that you're marrying. It's really a gift to all, because it's part of being chaste. It's part of the virtues, and the virtues really benefit all of humankind, right? When we exercise chastity. And so my own daughter is getting married this year. Mickey, you know that. Excited about the wedding, which is October 2022.
I'm sure you're very excited about that, Ann.
Yeah, we really are. And as you mentioned about the living chastity, it is very important. I mean, my daughter gets the question all the time about why isn't she cohabitating with her fiance? And my daughter is a person who follows her Catholic faith and loves her faith, and she's living with us, and we're thrilled to have her here, and thrilled that the two of them have made that commitment to really follow what their faith teaches. So we, like I said, this podcast isn't specifically about that topic, but I did want to address what you just said, because it is an important thing in our faith for those who are parents listening as well. But let's get back to our topic, which is those resources for those affected by divorce and separation. I thought we could talk a little bit about children of divorce. There's another ministry that I know of. It's called Restored Ministry. The founder, his name is Joey Pontarelli, and his website is restoredministry.com. And if you go to that website there, Restored's mission is about giving practical advice and tools to help teens and young adults cope, heal, and grow from the trauma of their parents' divorce or separation, so they can feel whole again and thrive in every area of life. And I know Joey Pontarelli, the founder. It is a nonprofit 501c3. He has a podcast and a blog. If you haven't subscribed to his website, please do. We've actually done a podcast with him too on our website and on our YouTube channel. So that's a good one. Mickey, I don't know if you've ever heard of that ministry, but it is a very good one for the adult children and teens and young adults to cope and heal after the trauma of their parents' divorce.
It's very humbling to know that there are other groups out there that are in the same cause as us.
Yes, absolutely. Because, it's when it comes to nonprofits and when it comes to those who are trying to offer healing, we're all working together, aren't we? I mean,
For sure.
It's not about, I want everybody only, or we as the Mercedarian order, representing the Mercedarian order, that we only have all the resources, right? That's why we have something like a outside resources page and the different resources that we have on our website, so that we can help educate you. Now, I want to turn to another person that I know who's in ministry. Now, what she's doing is she's helping children below the age of 18. So this would be something that parent and child would do together. Her name is Lynn Kapuscinski, and her ministry is called Faith Journeys. So if you're listening to this and you have children that you would like to find some healing, she's also a Catholic author, has done a great job with some of her books. You would go to faithjourneys.org and learn about what Lynn does. And I'll read right from her website, is that it's a program for children and or teens from divorced, separated, and remarried families. And she says that parental divorce is one of the biggest documented risk factors for marriage dissolution. While the church devotes a lot of attention to supporting marriage and family, What about preventative resources for children and teens from divorced or separated families? A child of divorce herself, she's dedicated her life to being that resource through faith journeys. So check that out. I mean, Lynn is a great person. I've also interviewed her for other podcasts that I've done before, and I believe even for the foundation. And again, faithjourneys.org. I mean, there's a wealth of information for those affected by divorce and separation, other nonprofits. And I turn again to Rose Sweet because she really has done a great deal for the adults, the couples, the people who are divorced and separated, wounded by divorce. I did want to touch on a little bit of the fact that the foundation, what we do is we offer resources for marriage as well. So if you're listening to this, as I said, we don't always just get people divorced and separated listening to this podcast. We also get couples or those who are separated, possibly with some hope of reconciling with a spouse, right? Let's talk a little bit about that. All of you might have heard of ministries such as Marriage Encounter or Retrovi. And then even on our own website, we have a 4-year marriage. We have a 4-year marriage page. So please do check that out, because we did a 3-part series back in October on ways couples can grow closer with Christ and his church. So if you're in a position, maybe you're even remarried, annulled and remarried again, this would be a good resource for you to go to our page, because I did a 3-part series with Robert LeBlanc. He is a Catholic author and catechist, and you can watch those videos that we have. They're really beautiful, to give you some information there. But Mickey, I didn't know if you wanted to share. I know you're very involved with pro-life, and people who are very much into marriage resources. Did you have anything you wanted to share in that respect?
Oh, for sure. Well, first off, I think one of the things that I have seen is that during my over a decade praying outside the abortion facilities, we usually have some young women that would come out and pray with us. And they would, and most of the time, these women, they actually would do sidewalk counseling. And what really amazes me is that these women, they moved on. Like, they probably find this guy. I think one occasion was this one lady that was with Generation Life, and you and I know this woman quite well, actually. Caitlin, I hope she's listening to us, of course, because she's getting a shout out right this very moment. But her husband, Vince, was at one point a seminarian at St. Charles Borromeo here in Philadelphia, although I believe he was from, I think, either the Allentown area, Berks County, or it could be Central PA. I forget what it is. But anyway, the point is, some of these, and honestly, I find them to be excellent role models, for these women who are going to these facilities, because these women, how they exercise chastity, not just in their, not just their actions, but also the way they presented themselves. And also, in particular, some of the women that I have met over the years that have been involved in missionary work, such as the Culture Project and Generational, even Focus Ministry. It just amazes me, how many of them wound up becoming some of the best, the best women that, some of the best women that they were called to be, modeling, the Blessed Mother, or even, just being as St. Catherine Siena once said, if you are called, if you are where you're meant to be, you will set the world on fire. And these women that I have known over the years, it's it just scratched my head. It's amazes me. I have to give credit to you on this one as well, Anne, because you have done it so well yourself. And it's just, and of course, I think it's something that is absent in our culture, because everyone is selling with the counterfeit that you don't need chastity whatsoever. And it's sad. And honestly, chastity, if you look at the umbrella of chastity, it's, if you look at the fact that sexual promiscuity, for over 50 years, has really taken has really, like, I would kind of think of it as we see like those like police dramas or hot situations where someone is like held like at like, say like knife or gunpoint, or oftentimes like maybe like they're like you have like an elbow wrapped around like the victim's neck or whatever. And I feel like it's where our culture is. But I think if we need to fight back and take back what is beautiful and good, there will be times where we'll try to, break away from our captors, be set free. And honestly, I think this is like the perfect way to do it, because like I said, these women, like, they do so, and then most of these women I've known, they're married, or once in a while, maybe I probably hear about them going into like pursuing the consecrated or even the religious life. Or oftentimes too, like there'll be one I would meet that would wound up being a consecrated virgin, which there seems to be like a bit of an uptick in that. And I think the Catholic Church is looking into it, like that could be a potential vocation. But we'll see what happens down the road. But to go back to your point, Ann, honestly, like not just us, but like the Culture Project, Generation Life, they have excellent resources on. They even link it to Chastity Project, or they even have like a YouTube series. And if you're listening to this podcast, we will include the link to some of their YouTube channels, so you can listen to some of your common questions you have about, chastity, about some of the church teachings that you probably were not instructed well enough. And it's not your fault. It's the person who taught you. And just so you know, for the record, we are not trying to, chastise you or judge you if you weren't instructed well enough, but we just want to help you to re-educate you a little bit. So, and let's face it, even though you may have a degree, like a bachelor's, master's, or even doctorate. I mean, I don't know if we have any doctors listen to this, but the reality is you never stop learning. And that's something I've learned.
Oh, absolutely.
Even you, Ann.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, thank you for sharing. And thanks for sharing your experience with some women that in ministry, whether it be in the pro-life area, because you've done so much there, and many people who have great resources, but sharing about chastity. And, chastity is for all of us. Okay. It's for younger people. It's for people who are yet to be married. It's for people who are married. It's for people who are separated and divorced and old. I mean, it's a lifetime thing for all of us, meaning that awareness of our purpose, right? And virtue, and living it, and remembering that what we do with ourselves and with our bodies is of great importance to God and does make a difference. So I'll just leave it at that in terms of that discussion, because I wanted to also turn it over to one more resource. And now this one would be more for someone who's listening who may be separated, and maybe there is some hope of possibly working things out with your husband or wife. It's Retrovi, and some of you have probably heard of this one before. It is a Catholic marriage program for marriages that are really in trouble. And I just pulled up the main website, which is retrovi.info, but it's RetroUVAILLE. Now, I know that's a tough one, but I believe it is on our own website too, but you can Google that. And the questions that it asks on their website are: do you feel lost, alone, or bored in your marriage? Are you constantly fighting, or do you simply shut down? Have you thought about separation or divorce? Does talking about it only make it worse? So I just want to mention that, because I know that sometimes there are people who are separated where there is some hope, there is some possibility of working things out. So we're always praying for you and whatever direction your life will go in. But at the same time, we want to have that outreach, that care, that support, and that really walking alongside with those who are already divorced or already annulled, already living apart for many years, possibly from an ex-husband and ex-wife, and still have many questions and need for healing in your life. And one more resource I want to mention also from our own website, if I could, is the information about annulments, because we did a whole series on Catholic annulments. By that, I mean it's a YouTube video, 4, in fact. If you go again to nonnatus.org under For the Divorced and Separated, and you go to the bottom of that page, we do have a section there that is for annulments. Now, forgive me, I'm looking at that, and for whatever reason, I can't find it on the page. So please do forgive me. But we do have that also on our YouTube channel. I'll make sure that I get that on that page for all of you. Sometimes there's little surprises when we double check our work, right? But if you go to our YouTube channel at Philly Nonnatus and you go to our annulments series, you will see that one. In fact, it got a lot of views. It was with Father Matthew Phelan, a Mercedarian friar who's also the vicar of our religious order now, and Father Sean Bransfield, who was working in the with the Archdiocese and spoke to so many people about his knowledge on divorce and annulment. Can I also mention that the best place for all of you to go who have those questions about annulments is first to go to your own church, your own pastor, and or your own archdiocese and diocese. They're the people that would handle it. And I know that in my archdiocese, where Mickey and I are, the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, has really great people who handle that. So be sure to go to archphila.org and click on the information to find out more if you need that, or your own pastor, depending. So that's just a great place to go there too. Wanted to talk a little bit about what our next podcast is going to be on, so that you will tune back in again for our February. So our February podcast is going to be stepping back from too many commitments to be with family. So be sure to mark your calendar. It will premiere the first Tuesday of February at 8 p.m. All of our podcasts are on demand, which is great, meaning that you can listen at any time. So even this podcast, and the other ones that we did, you can go back and listen. So Mick, I didn't know if you had anything else to say on resources, because, it is important that people get those resources for, going through divorce, separation, or annulments. Are any other resources that you know of that you think could help people?
Well, and I would say, of course, judging by the views we had from our previous episode, I think we may have some that could be listening, say, maybe that are not from, let's say, the Philly area, but maybe they're like in other parts of the country. My suggestion would be, I would say, reach out to like the Life and Family office in your archdiocese. And let's face it, of course, with the, of course, when I was growing up, like when I was a kid, of course, we had the advent of the internet. But of course, most of the stuff that like you and I have now, like everything was like, we had the Stone Age version of the internet, and now we have, I don't know if we're going to be propelled into like the digital age of the internet, but I just think it's just something to really consider. And let's face it, I would guarantee maybe 90%, 9 out of 10 people are going to be on their like something that's like, technology these days, especially if we look at with the pandemic and everything, that if you look at like people were working remotely, and you had people that were doing they were doing their grocery orders online, shopping online, of course most of that was happening prior to the pandemic. But I also think too, like if people would just take some time to nourish their faith a little bit before they do all this like consumerism, or of course they're going about their 9-to-5 thing, just probably like try to nurture their faith one way or another. So just don't be afraid, like to pull a Google search on I'm divorced, how do I go about it, and reach out to your local diocese. I think that's one of the most important things to do. And the other thing I would also suggest is get to confession. That's very important. And there was a deacon that was very good to my mom when she thought that she was seen as an outcast. I'm going to tell you something. Even Jesus himself, he was seen as an outcast by people who claim to love God, yet they act like a bunch of hypocrites.
Yes.
And you see that deacon reminded my mom that she can go to mass, she can receive the sacraments as often, as frequent as she can for the sake of her soul. So can you.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because that's a question that people have a lot of times. And of course, we're going to talk a lot about that on other podcasts, but I'll just say that, if someone is not in a state of sin, right, and you're divorced, not annulled, but you're not in a state of mortal sin, there's nothing that's holding you back from participating in Mass and the sacramental life. So thank you for bringing that one up. I want to also turn to a couple more resources on our website under those outside resources. Like I said, go to nonnatus.org, helpful resources, and then outside resources. If you go kind of to the bottom of the page, there's some links that I really think you should all check out. Number one is one called Catholic Divorce Ministry. There's an icon there. Rose Suite, as I said, rosesuite.com. And there's also one there for the Roman Diocese of San Diego. I happen to know the woman who runs the program there. And there's a lot of really good resources really for anybody, even if you don't live in their diocese. So please check it out. There's another one called Life Giving Wounds. And Mickey, you might have heard of this one. Lifegivingwounds.org. Adult children of divorce and separation often feel alone and lost and are searching for lasting healing and love. Leaders are looking for Catholic ministries to help support them. Their mission is to bring God's healing to young adults and adults whose parents have divorced or separated. I know the people that run that ministry as well. It's beautiful. It's a nonprofit 501c3. Doing something similar to what Joey Pontarelli does with Restored, but there's so many resources that help all of us. So we're all working together. People like us, the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, Rose Suite, Life Giving Wounds, Restored, a lot of those other ones that I mentioned. So just make sure that you really check out, subscribe to all of their websites and learn more. Get yourself educated on what it really means to live out your faith, no matter what. And Mickey made a good point. Sometimes through the fault of no one, really. It could even be just the way that you were educated about the sacramental life and about marriage, and that's through no one's fault. A lot of times, sometimes we're not given the right resources from the very beginning, whether it be from our upbringing or even through lifestyles that we've had in the past that we no longer are that way anymore. We're living a different life. But sometimes healing is needed for all of us, every single one of us. Part of the mission of our Holy Father, I've said this before on other podcasts, is that accompaniment. It's so important. And that's why we do what we do, is because we care. And I've had social media posts that have alluded to that fact that the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation cares. I think what sets us apart is that we offer the one-on-one pastoral consultation with a Mercedarian friar. What does that mean for you? That means that if you have questions of faith and you want to talk to a priest, and maybe your pastor or parochial vicar or some other priest that everybody's busy, right? Right now we're in the holiday season. This is being aired after the new year. But we're not too busy for you. We're here. Now, you do have to make an appointment. It can't be just a call where I can immediately connect you with one of our friars. We do have to make an appointment. But just go to our website and under Priestly Consult, fill out the form. It goes right to me as director, and I'll set up an appointment with one of our priests. So we're here for you. You can have as many appointments as you need. So it's not just a once and done. If you want to have more than one appointment, you're welcome to that. I do want to mention that our ministry is it's threefold. Okay. So first is families in crisis, first and foremost. That would be, as I said at the beginning, if you are affected by divorce, job loss, relationship issues, loss of a loved one, sickness, issues with your kids, parenting issues, all kinds of things, relationship problems, marital issues. We're here for you. So that's what we do, is offer for families in crisis. Our second mission is marriage enrichment, even above and beyond divorce and separation. And by that, I mean is that we are for strong marriages and families, and we want to offer those programs and resources for marriages too, which are on our website. We have a special drop down for your marriage. Be sure to check that out. And lastly is that initial mission that we had from the very beginning, is support of Catholics who are wounded by divorce. By that, I mean the parents, the couples, of course, and the children and adult children, primarily the adult children, because if it's for children, of course, parents have to be involved. It has to be a parent and child if it's someone below the age of 18, because of safe environment. We want to make sure that we follow all the proper rules in dealing with minors. But we primarily don't deal with minors, it's adult children. Now, we do have to end this podcast. Mickey, I didn't know if you had any other words of wisdom to those listening who are wounded by divorce.
Hey, be careful what you wish for, okay, Ann?
Yeah.
But I would just like to reiterate once again, and well, first and foremost, I do want a message for the clergy. Do not look down on anyone who experienced divorce as an outcast. Do not even think about marginalizing them. They are children of God just as much as everyone else that fills the pews on every given Sunday, let alone the novena clique that gets that extra grace going to daily mass. And let's face it, I am very thankful for some of those people that are part of that novena clique, because they helped shape me for who I am today. Some of them are just no longer with us. I mean, God rest their souls. And most of them are still alive and kicking, which is amazing to me. But the bottom line, I just want to say this. If you're scared to sit in pew on a Sunday and you are a divorced Catholic, whether as a divorced child or spouse, don't be scared. You have to do what the fishermen have done, cast their nets out into the deep. And I think as Catholics, we ought to do that ourselves. We ought to cast ourselves out there. And, of course, let's face it, God will find us. And I just like to say to the priests, don't be afraid to preach truth every given Sunday. And do not be afraid to reach out to those that you see every time you celebrate Mass, and maybe you want to, welcome them. And let's face it, you don't need to look at a vaccination card, or you don't have to look at this or look at that, see anything like that, or anything. Because when you were ordained a priest, you made a promise that you will love each sheep in your flock. And then let's face it, it's not an easy thing to do. Now, there are some that need little maintenance. There are some that need maybe somewhere in the maybe 50-50. And those that probably need a heck of a lot of work. And those that have been divorced, those that have fallen away from the faith and are trying to come back, they're the ones in that third category right there. And, and I would guarantee you will find maybe 2 out of 3 priests who will go above and beyond for you to make sure that you keep receiving the sacraments, you keep, you get involved with parish, different ministries or whatever is going on in your parish. But I think it's also very important to find people who are on the same journey as you. Introduce yourselves and, get together with them. And I can guarantee you the Catholic community will be at large. And let's face it, that's the most important step to heal. That of course we talked about in the previous episode, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there. keep going to mass. Keep laying down your worries, the cross that you bear from the divorce at the foot of the altar. Because Jesus did that when he took when he took the scourging, he took that brutal beating from the soldiers for our sins. He thought of you just as much as he thought of me. Never forget that, because he loved us so much.
I'm glad you brought that up, because really, our relationship with Christ is at the very heart of everything, right? Everything that we do is that relationship that we have with Christ and his church. So thank you for those words of wisdom that we all need to hear, including me. I want to mention one more thing before we end, and that Mickey brought up a really good point when he brought up clergy. This podcast, the topic was resources. Remember that your first resources to go to is your own pastor, your own church, the priest there. Now, if you don't feel comfortable with the people at your church, if you would rather go someplace else, go to a different church in your area, a different Catholic church, or your archdiocese, your diocese. But don't forget that the people that are local to you, they can really make a difference to sit down with you one-to-one in person. And I think I just encourage you to do that. Make sure that you make that outreach, and please know that we care for you. We're here for you at the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation. Mickey, thank you so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Ann.
God bless everyone. We'll see you here next month with the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith podcast for Catholics affected by divorce. God bless.
Happy New Year. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. For more information about the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation, visit nonnatus.org or email director.srnf@gmail.com. Did you enjoy this podcast? Listen to other podcasts from Patchwork Heart Ministry by following Patchwork Heart Radio wherever you listen to podcasts.
Today, many students go to college with numerous questions about their faith, yearning to know if the seed planted in them as a child is both true and practical. Using the miracle on the road to Emmaus as a model, young adult ministers conversed weekly for 3 months with college students about the most pressing questions they had about the Catholic faith. As they journeyed together virtually, something amazing happened. Doubts disappeared, fears faded, and Jesus revealed that he is still alive. Hearts Burning Within Us, the latest book from Patchwork Heart Ministry, is a result of that grace-infused conversation. It is the perfect back-to-school gift for recent high school graduates and current college students. Get your copy for them today at patchworkheart.org or by calling 424-704-3278. That's 424-704-3278.